Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today I'm bringing you a preview of Anastyr from Mythic Games, an epic campaign-based miniature skirmish game where you're going to be exploring through side-scrolling tiles as you move across this region, fighting hordes of barbarian warlords, dragons, and other abominations using mystical and magical spells to, well, lead your tribe to victory. If you want to take, like, Conan the Barbarian and throw him into an epic fantasy world, it's exactly what you're getting here in Anastyr. In this video, I'm going to walk you through everything you do in this game, at least in the prototype that we have, some of the features that I think are worth noting or are substantially cool, and give you as much information as you're going to need to decide whether or not this game is one that you want to add to your collection. Being said, this is a Quackalope video, so let's start with a rubber duck toss and a little bit of flavor text. Demo version. Situated chronologically. Let's try that again. Situated chronologically between the sinking of Atlantis and the great flood that later drowned the world, a remarkable Bronze Age unfolded. This was a time of legends, raw magic, and fierce conflicts spanning the luxuriant juggles and streaming swamps of what would one day become the Mediterranean Sea. Heroes gathered from all corners of the continent for an epic quest to save the world from a threat posed by Anastyr, the Dragon Queen. So, that is going to be the homage, the title of this game, the Dragon Queen that you're facing down against. And in this prototype copy, while I have epic and amazing miniatures, I don't actually have an incredible Dragon Queen. Instead, the most regal and substantial miniature that I have is this giant freaking behemoth, which was one of the coolest discoveries that I ever figured out. This little mage on a pot with one hand crawling out from underneath it turns into this, with the pot tilted and the mage riding arm outstretched above. I absolutely love the visual, and I love the transformative nature of elements of these miniatures. I mean, look, I'm currently on top of a wyvern, and my rider is magnetized. So my rider pops off, and someone else could set down on top. Or I could be riding a horse, or a unicorn, or some other type of foul beast across the landscape. But that's not what we're focusing on. Let's focus on Anastyr and the elements of Anastyr that are so cool. So throughout the course of Anastyr, you're going to be going through a campaign with different logged story cards that change the terrain, change the objective, spawn new creatures, enemies, and buff or debuff your characters from scenario to scenario. The object of the game, in terms of the chapter scenario, is going to be flowing from one board to the next, and after you've progressed off of one board, you'll be able to flip and resolve another board or add another one to slide in. It has sort of a book style, innovative mechanic when it comes to the side-scrolling nature. This board will pop up and off all of these boards, tiles, miniatures, everything will remain the same, and the next board will cycle down, presenting you with a brand new scenario, a brand new challenge, and a brand new puzzle to solve. I personally find the side-scrolling insanely thematic because it doesn't stop the flow of the game. It's not resetting a page, it's not a brand new dungeon crawl scenario. Instead, everything maintains the same momentum. Health, stats, programmed cards, and more all maintain their position. So, what do you actually do in Anastyr? In Anastyr, you're going to be taking control of one of various heroes. In this prototype copy, we have 6, and I believe we have a warrior, a rogue, a shaman, we have a tank, and I think we have another war chief rogue or something like that. Classic kind of RPG style barbarian traits, right? You're going to be able to use their special abilities, their power, the items that they have, their unlockable heroic card, and different mounts that you've equipped to your different heroes, like the wyvern that I'm riding over there, to engage with various cards and various actions. Each hero will have a set of special abilities that will be programmed based on the cards you have, their own unique deck of player abilities that you'll be able to utilize on your turn to take additional actions, and then base stats, things like movement, base attack, and ways that you resolve when you don't have a lot of other things to do. At the start of play, you're going to be cycled into this program here, which is going to determine player order and how you'll actually resolve your actions. And you'll be given a scenario card with just a touch of flavor text and some type of objective. Take out a certain enemy, explore various huts, or clear the board of all enemies and scroll it to the side, meaning you're moving forward and progressing the game. You'll have your various enemy spawn cards here that indicate what type of abilities each enemy has. And these will vary from special powers, abilities, to also buffs and debuffs on the board, like providing extra strength to allies that are around, spawning more allies, well, enemies, at the end of each round phase, and even acting first or getting an advantage when it comes to defense, movement, and other attacks. On your turn, depending on where you are in this player order, you'll resolve by taking 2 actions. That could be a simple move and attack, it could be playing a card, it could be cycling and sequencing a special ability, or utilizing an item. And sometimes you'll get bonus actions, like popping 2 cards down here that have the red symbol will allow me to activate my piercing arrows attack, cycling both of these cards off, bumping up my rage mechanic just a little bit, and also giving me an extra additional action. Or the wyvern could take an extra attack action just because I'm riding on its back, as long as it has a target for it to hit. So you'll resolve your action and you'll continue going through turn order. When it gets to the enemies, you'll activate the enemies based off their movement stats, always targeting the leader or the priority target when it comes to player turn order, or whoever is going to be next to act. When you get to the end of this cycle, you'll have Jade Sea story cards, which is the environment we're in now, but these will be extra little modifiers that pop up either at the beginning, end, or middle of this turn sequence. I like that the story cards fall somewhere in the mix, but you're never quite sure where, because these could be, again, buffs or debuffs. These could be things like our relics that pop out onto the board, giving you better defense. But they could also be things that spawn, hurt, or provide more protection for the enemies that you're trying to take down. So mitigating and understanding when and where those are going to hit is essential. On top of that, these cards over here are also going to be the things that determine one element of the flow of the game. You see, you have a certain time period to race to the finish line and complete whatever your story arc is before you get to the end of this event deck for each particular region. In our case, we came right down to the wire, and you'll have to watch to see if we actually crossed the finish line or if we fell slightly short. Along with that, you're going to have all of your potential enemies spawning onto the board with these spawn cards, which will happen at the end of every phase. These will determine what side of the board they're going to show up on and which enemies are going to pop in. New enemies and new creatures and features will be introduced from the story cards as you move and progress setup. You'll also have things like items, gear, and ways to, I believe, gain experience, gain coin, and modify your characters and decks as you continue to play the game. This is such a cool game. Throughout the course of it, you'll feel like you're being swarmed and overwhelmed by, like I've said, hooked daggers and barbarian knights, or war chiefs riding at you on the back of leopard-like dogs or hyena-like beasts. You'll be fighting through mobs of them, and with a slash of your blade, you'll take down 10 in one swing, but there'll be 15 more flowing up from behind. This game feels powerful, feels like you're doing an immense amount of damage and really engaging with a foe that's just operating here on the board. This is tactical, it's dexterous, and gives you a lot of different player options and abilities. Now, one note for those that are considering the player count they want to play this at, I believe this is a 1 to 4 player game, but my preferred count I think is going to be 2. The reason being, at 3 players, you're actually going to be getting 2 actions every turn. But at 2 players, to keep the balance of the game intact, you'll get 3 actions for each one of your characters, giving you a little bit more time to program, prep for the future, and a few more cool things that you can do on your turn. You could run, dash, slash, and murder someone adjacent to you, or around you, or whatever the sequence is. Because at the end of the day, what Anastyr does well is it makes you feel heroic. Its sequences, actions, and cards allows you to wipe out hordes of creatures and makes you feel powerful. It's exactly what ironclad men and women should be doing on the battlefield. Being able to fire a dozen arrows at once, or using one just giant blunt object to crush the skulls of my enemies, wyverns and dragons potentially included. The lore writing is good, the mythic kind of tropes here are solid, and I think, for me, this is the barbarian-themed game that I am the most excited to dive into right now. There's a lot of compelling features here. Now, some of the things that maybe did or did not work for us personally when we were playing, we would still like to see these characters developed a little bit more. Again, at 3 players, only playing 2 actions per character, there were definitely some turns where I wasn't as involved. Whereas in 2-player game scenarios, taking extra actions allowed me to debuff those or mitigate those by having some times where I used one of my actions to slot a card, and instead of it being 50% of my action, it was only a third, which actually makes a substantial difference when it comes to the experience throughout the duration of the gameplay. I felt like everyone was able to be involved and have a good time, but depending on the mitigation that you want with your different characters, I think that's something worth paying attention to. The other thing I would say is I'm excited to see how these characters evolve. Right now in the prototype, I don't have enough information to gauge what we're able to gain. Experience, brand new cards for my deck, bonuses, abilities that swap out my combos, or just general stats, maybe mounts that I spawn onto the board with. I have no idea, but I will be checking out the campaign page and doing my very darndest to suss out everything that is included in the length of this campaign. Because if they give me the option to customize my hero, have additional gear cards, spawn with a mount, and modify my own unique character deck, I don't know that I have any real standing character complaints, other than the fact that in the prototype, I wanted to play more, and I wanted more out of them. So, best and worst reason. Why should you consider getting this? Well, this is a romp. This is fun. This has some of the coolest miniatures I've encountered in board games with the modularity that makes you invested in using them, right? The fact that this woman can pop onto this beast when she tames it is just such a cool experience. There's something about the tactical nature of manipulating, engaging, and having miniatures that you get to play with, right? There's something so fun about that. It gives you ownership over your character and your hero. And the campaign so far is invested. It's good. It's fun. It feels like it unfolds or unveils a story throughout the course of play. Along with that, I just love the theme. I love the barbarian style world and atmosphere, the brutality of it, the raw nature of it, the open flesh, and the, like I said before, blunt objects mixed with a little bit of the arcane. There's a lot of cool happening on the board. One thing to evaluate before you decide to back or not is, do you get these type of games to the table? This is going to be standable as a one-shot, but I think the best experience is going to be through the campaign. As you watch your characters buff and debuff, as you play through this narrative and watch as the board flips and things get untold. If you've got 2 people, yourself and one other person, who are willing and committed to sit down, then I think this is an easy decision. But if you're still questioning how many people are going to play it and whether or not you're going to be able to get to the table regularly and consistently, then maybe give it a closer look before you make that final decision. At the end of the day, Anastyr is really, really cool. It's an exciting title that I'm glad I have the chance to show off. I already want to sit down and paint this creature, and I'm not entirely sure that I will, because I just don't know that I have the skill to justify it. But it's been on my mind for the last 2 or 3 days. I'm excited for the finished version of this game to show up and excited for the campaign to actually launch so I can sink my teeth into a little bit more information and get a little bit more details on it. So, thank you for joining me. Hopefully this has been an insightful look into brand new game from Mythic Games. If you're excited, let me know in the comments down below. And with that, have a good day.